Edith Cushing stands in a cold landscape staring at her bloodied hand, with a gash on her face. She narrates that ghosts are real because the first ghost she ever saw was at 10 years old when cholera took her mother. One night, a young Edith has trouble sleeping. She hears someone coming up the stairs. In hopes that it goes away, she turns around, but the ghost holds her tightly and whispers to beware of Crimson Peak. 14 years later in Buffalo, New York, Edith carries her manuscript to her uncle to help publish it. She runs into Dr. Allen, who just got back from his travels. They have a pleasant conversation. After her uncle finishes reading her manuscript, he tells her to include a love story in her ghost story. Edith vents to her father Carter about this. Carter gives her a pen, but Edith doesn't want to write her book with a pen because her penmanship gives her gender away. The next day, Thomas Sharpe meets Edith and he compliments her on her book. Thomas is there to present his new machine on clay mining to Edith's father. Carter isn't impressed though, because Thomas hasn't actually tested the machine, and he has no experience in manual labor. Although Carter is a business tycoon, he got there through hard manual labor. Carter also points out that Thomas failed to raise money in Edinburgh, Milan, and London. Later that night, Alan picks up Carter for a special night, while Edith stays home to research. The door handle in her room shakes vigorously, then eventually opens on its own. Edith finds the ghost in the hallway, who warns her again to beware of Crimson Peak. A few moments later, Thomas Sharpe pays her a visit that night to bring her to the event. At the event, Lucille Sharpe plays the piano very well, just as Thomas and Edith make a grand entrance. Lucille interrupts by giving her brother Thomas to a woman to dance with. Later, Thomas decides to pick Edith as a dance partner to show how to properly waltz. His sister is not happy with this. Dr. Allen seems jealous of the prospect of them as a couple. Not even her own dad approves. The next day, Carter sends Holly to investigate Thomas because he has a bad feeling about him. The following days, Edith grows a closer relationship to Thomas and even bonds with Lucille. Afterwards, Lucille suspiciously tells Thomas that Edith isn't the right choice because she's just a child. However, Thomas thinks Edith is the one, so Lucille hands Thomas her red crimson ring. After Holly's investigation, he gives Carter his findings. That night, Carter asks to speak to Thomas and Lucille about what he found out. He shows them a document that we as the audience don't get a clear view of. Carter bribes the two with a large amount of money to leave town, and for Thomas to break Edith's heart. At dinner, Thomas announces his departure and Edith is heartbroken by the news. Edith walks away, but Thomas follows her to criticize her writing. He calls her a spoiled child, so Edith slaps him. Edith is heartbroken, just as her father had planned. The next morning while getting ready, Carter hears mysterious sounds. Then the sink has flooded the bathroom. Behind him is a masked person who slams Carter's head into the sink until he dies. Meanwhile, Edith receives a letter from Thomas telling the truth of how Carter had bribed him to break her heart. Edith rushes to meet up with Thomas, who admits his love for Edith. The two happily kiss, only to be met with the bad news of Carter's murder. Edith is shocked to find her father's head smashed in, and Dr. Allen tries to investigate his body. However, Edith tells them to stop touching her father like that. She cries into Thomas's arms. At Carter's funeral, Edith is shown wearing the crimson red ring that Lucille once owned. Eventually, the two recently married couple make it to Cumberland, England at Allerdale Hall, the Sharpe estate. The groundskeeper greets the couple, who comments the two have been married for a long time. Edith is confused by this since they just got married. A stray dog also greets them, and Thomas agrees to take him in. They arrive at the grand hall, but it's old and has a hole in the ceiling. The wood is rotting, and the floorboards seep some red clay from below. When Edith removes her hat, half-dead flies flicker their wings. Then a ghostly figure can be seen behind her through the mirror. She follows the figure and it goes up the elevator. When she tells Thomas this, Thomas dismisses her, then tells her to never go to the lower levels. Edith gives Lucille a warm hug, but Lucille is cold towards her. Later that night, Edith tries to take a bath, but the water comes out red at first. While bathing, she plays fetch with the dog. She starts to see the same ghostly figure in the hallway. She ignores it at first, but then it peeks its smashed-in head into the bathroom. When she turns around, it is not there. Thomas gives Edith some tea made from fire-thin berries, but Edith doesn't enjoy the bitterness. The creaking of the house creeps Edith out, but Thomas tries his best to soothe her. The next day, while Lucille plays the piano, Edith finds a large painting of Lucille's dead mother. She notices the same red jeweled ring in the painting. Then, Lucille questions Edith if she finally did the nasty with Thomas. Edith says they haven't. Lucille seems relieved about the news. Back in America, Dr. Allen is at Cotter's estate helping sell their things. Allen notices Cotter's checkbook that shows an invoice for Thomas Sharpe. This causes him to investigate the sink where Cotter's head was smashed in. Meanwhile, Edith is getting her footing at her new home. Riding the elevator upstairs to find moths overrun in a room. A ghostly figure can be seen on a wheelchair. Edith eventually finds Thomas working in his room. As the two are about to do the nasty, Lucille interrupts them with some tea. They suspiciously look at each other as Edith drinks the tea, and the siblings don't drink any of it. In the middle of the night, Edith wakes up with some stomach cramps. She finds her husband isn't in bed with her, so she gets up to look for him. In the hallway, a skeletal ghost crawls on the floor. Edith runs away and takes the elevator downstairs with her dog. She finds a container with the initials ES. It says Enola. The next day, Thomas is testing out his clay machine near the estate. Edith tries to talk to him about someone who may have died in the house, but Thomas dismisses her. Thomas ends up burning his hand due to the steam of the machine, so Edith bandages him up. Thomas reveals that his estate is called Crimson Peak because of the red clay that seeps through the coming winter snow. Edith realizes this is what the ghosts have been warning her about. Later, Dr. Allen goes to Ferguson, a man who was told by Edith to invest her father's money into Thomas's machine. Dr. Allen admits that the mystery surrounding Cotter's death should be investigated more. Ferguson tells Allen to look into a man named Holly who was hired by Carter to investigate Thomas. At night, Edith dreams of the ghostly red figure in a field. She's waken up by coughing out blood, and finds once again that Thomas isn't sleeping in bed with her. She starts to call upon the ghosts that have been warning her about Crimson Peak. Behind her, an apparition walks by the window. Eventually, the ghost pulls her hand downward, causing the candles to blow out. She hears screams coming from the bathroom. A ghostly red figure is in the bathtub with a meat cleaver on its head. It gets up and starts following Edith, who is screaming for her husband. The woman warns her to leave. When Edith tells Lucille and Thomas about this, Lucille tells Edith she isn't going anywhere and it was simply a bad dream. Edith wants to get out of the house, but Lucille tries to calm her down with some special tea once again. The siblings leave and wonder how Edith knows about their mother. Lucille hopes Edith signs the papers soon so that they can be done with her. The next day, Thomas brings Edith to the post office to get her away from the house. The postman gives her a letter which is addressed to Lady Sharpe, and it's from someone from Milan, Italy. Subsequently, Dr. Allen has met up with Holly in regards to his investigation on Thomas Sharpe. Holly gives him a newspaper about a vile murder in the Sharpe estate. Holly also points out that Carter had tried to prevent Thomas from marrying Edith because Thomas is already married. That night, Edith and Thomas sleep in town because the snowstorm stopped them from going back to Crimson Peak. Edith wonders why they couldn't just leave the house. They could live anywhere. She starts listing a bunch of cities, and once she mentions Milan, Thomas is taken aback. Instead of prying for more information, they do the nasty. The next day, Edith tells Lucille they were snowed in so they couldn't return home. When Edith says they slept in the same bed together, Lucille is furious and tosses a pan of food towards her. She apologizes for her outburst. Then Lucille sees the letters that Edith received. Edith admits she doesn't feel well, so Lucille makes her tea. While Lucille is looking away, Edith grabs the key that says the words Enola on them and also grabs her letters. The first letter is from Ferguson saying the money has been transferred, but the rest of the money to be transferred needs her signature. Before she signs the paperwork, she reads the letter from Milan. The letter is in Italian, but it's actually for Enola Sharpe, not Edith Sharpe. Because of this, Edith decides to investigate the crate in the basement. She uses the key to open it. Meanwhile, Thomas is happy that his machine is working. The red clay seeps through the snow like blood. Back downstairs, Edith finds paperwork from Edinburgh, Milan, and London helping her recall what her father said at Thomas's meeting with him. She then unlocks one of the wells of red clay. She uses a metal stick to figure out what's inside to no avail. When she leaves, skeletal remains float back up. Suddenly, Lucille realizes her key is missing. She calls around the house for Edith, but Edith runs away to hide the keys and pretends to be sick. Lucille notices Edith didn't drink her tea this time, so when Lucille grabs Edith some plain water, Edith returns the Enola key. Lucille still knows Edith took the key though. In the middle of the night, Edith listens to old recordings that Thomas's mother had recorded. She also goes over the packages from the Enola box that she had found. She finds a picture of Enola drinking tea. It turns out Enola used to own the dog that Thomas tried to play off as a stray. She even finds a picture of a dead baby. Another recording had revealed that Enola was being poisoned by the tea. Edith starts to cough up blood again. Realizing that there's a conspiracy to poison her, Edith tries to leave the house. When she opens the door, she's met with a snowstorm. Snow fills the room and she eventually faints. The next day she's laying in bed, and Lucille is there with some more tea. Edith refuses the tea, so Lucille feeds her some porridge. Lucille ominously says she'll take care of Edith just like how she took care of her bedridden mother. She tries to get Edith to drink more tea, but Thomas interrupts them before Edith can drink it. Thomas whispers to her to never drink the tea. When Thomas goes to confront Lucille, Lucille says she put the poison in the porridge anyway. Thomas doesn't want to continue with this. However, Lucille tells him they need to do this because they would be hanged if their secret was found out. Thomas admits that she's correct. Meanwhile, Dr. Allen is trying to reach Crimson Peak. People warn him that he won't be able to get there by horse, so he's going to walk the rest of the way. He hopes the townsfolk can meet him there later after the snowstorm subsides. Back at the hellhole, Edith is coughing out more blood. She's in a wheelchair now and starts to hear cries of a baby. She finds the ghost holding a baby ghost. Enola's ghost points towards the room upstairs filled with moths. When Edith goes inside, she finds Thomas doing the nasty with his sister. Edith leaves the room with Lucille following her. Edith tells Lucille she knew that they weren't siblings all along. Lucille rips her crimson ring off Edith and says Thomas and her are siblings. Before pushing Edith off the balcony, she falls onto the second-floor banister before hitting a pile of snow left from the open ceiling. Dr. Allen knocks loudly as Edith lays on the ground. When Edith finally wakes up, Dr. Allen tells her to relax because she's heavily sedated. The incestuous Sharpe siblings stand behind Allen as they wait to see if Edith reveals the truth. Allen apologizes for dropping unannounced. Lucille tries to hide everything by saying Edith has been super delirious, saying weird crap. Allen then grabs the tea and tries to give it to Edith, but she refuses it. Once the two are finally alone, Allen tells her he's going to take her away. Meanwhile, Lucille plans on stopping Allen. She hands Thomas a knife and hopes he has the guts to do it this time. Allen picks up Edith to bring her out, but the siblings are there to stop them. Allen knows they've been poisoning Edith. He hands Edith a newspaper clipping that says Lady Beatrice Sharpe, the mother, was murdered in the bathtub. A meat cleaver was used to kill her. No suspects, but her very young children. Thomas at 12 years old, and Lucille 14 years old. Lucille fights her rage back. Allen continues that Thomas had married 3 other women before for money. As Allen escorts Edith out, Lucille grabs a concealed knife and stabs Allen. Allen pulls out the knife as blood starts to gush out. Lucille tells Thomas to finish the job as she grabs the dog to kill it. Thomas stabs Allen. Then Edith calls them monsters. Lucille admits that is exactly what their mom had said before she died. Just outside, the red clay spills over the white snow. When Thomas brings Allen down to the basement, it turns out Thomas had stabbed Allen in a non-fatal spot. He hopes to end Lucille's terror soon. Upstairs, Lucille tosses Edith's manuscript into the fire, saying she's not a writer. Lucille wants Edith to sign the paperwork that would allow them to keep all of her money. She holds the pen that her father gifted her and refuses to sign. It's revealed that Enola never had a baby. It was actually Lucille's baby that was born deformed due to her incestuous relationship with Thomas. It had died due to its deformities. Lucille snips some of Edith's hair. While braiding it, she admits that the fake marriages that Thomas had was all for money. She puts the braided hair with the rest of her trophy collection. She reveals that when her mother found out about their incestuous love affair, she was horrified. Lucille snaps and threatens Edith to sign her name, so Edith does. Edith then asks Lucille who killed her father. Lucille admits that she was the one who smashed his face into the sink. Edith then uses the pen to stab Lucille in the chest. Then Edith runs away. She runs into Thomas, who starts to tell Edith that he's going to make everything right. Thomas tosses the signed paperwork into the fire, and Lucille is shocked by this. He tries to convince Lucille that they can run away to be free. They can all be together with their dead child. Lucille realizes that Thomas has fallen in love with Edith, so she begins stabbing him multiple times. She gives one final stab into the face, then realizes the stupid thing she's done as she cries. Meanwhile, Edith's dumb butt still hasn't left the house. She narrowly escapes Lucille's rage as she goes down the elevator to help Allen. The two hide behind one of the wells, So, Lucille decides to dig up the meat cleaver that she had used to kill her mother. Edith grabs the knife and she finds a way outside by the clay machine. In the flurry snowstorm, Edith barely escapes Lucille's cleaver as she chops parts of her hair. The machine starts up and Edith tries to go in for the kill. But Lucille uses her bare hands to get a hold of the knife. Edith uses a shovel to protect herself. And luckily, the ghost of Thomas distracts Lucille long enough for Edith to hit the crazy woman with a shovel. Edith goes to Thomas and bids him a farewell as his apparition vanishes into thin air. At the end of it, Edith and Alan walk away from Crimson Peak. While the nearby townsfolk have come to rescue them, Edith narrates that ghosts never go away.
Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like. It really helps the channel.